like the hardest horror story of all time. All time. Anybody can relate to this. If you work a 9 to 5, if you trap, anybody. You got a birthday, and then you gotta work that same day. Great Luke, let's go. I ain't from the 6, but I can show them the views. I'm staying viral for a few in the eyes of the new. My perception was embedded within the stars. Formation smelling gory, death the glory steps from a far location. Look inside Pandora's box for a choice of different weapons. Never know if it's my kindness or a sharp Smith and Wesson. Depending on your discovery, we'll take it there. You verse another legend in the making like creator player. I'm a window through the pain, seen and heard about. Folklore, you in a story created by word of mouth. Then I'm chopping fables, chopping fables, chopping fables, chopping fables. Hell wrong with him? Boy lost his mind.
Lost my mind. I have indeed. Guys, it's been a while, man. It's been quite a while. So I did the last episode about 2 months ago and was like super jazzed up about it. And man, I'm going to go and, you know, season 2 and everything like that. That last one was kind of like a one-off because it was just like a wrestling episode and I was super into it. And I had somebody who was willing to rap with me for 2 hours about fucking 90s wrestling. So I was looking for what are my topics because I was quickly running out of things to bitch about for an hour every episode, you know? And so I'm like, what are my topics? What are my things? And I have some things that I still want to get to for sure, but I kind of realized that the topics might be just the people that I encounter in my everyday life. And today's no different. I have a coworker named Jonathan here on the podcast today, and we've talked about doing this for a while, probably like 6 months, right? Or at least
easy months. So we keep saying, hey, we need to do it, but we just never could get a topic.
Right. And you know, with us working in retail, like having the same day off a lot of times was kind of difficult because it was like, hey, I got Tuesday and Thursday, and you'd be like, yeah, I got Monday and Wednesday, you know, like, yep. So it was difficult from that perspective too. And this is going to be a heavy topic today. This isn't like the can men and women be friends, like funny, you know, kind of light-hearted shit. I wanted to have this conversation, which is today's topic is about gun control and the way that the media portrays gun owners and the way that different things that different factions of people want to do regarding gun control and regarding guns in America. And, you know, we're going to kind of touch on all the topics. There are people who have entire civil rights and gun rights podcasts, you know, like that's their only topic. So obviously we're going to be kind of scratching the surface on this, even in the extended length of time that we have to do it. But it's definitely something that I wanted to do. And then El Paso happened earlier last week. And then right after that, Ohio happened.
Is it always just weird to you that it always seems like something like this happens once a year?
Yeah,
like
you know,
right about the time like something else is kind of like taking the spotlight.
Right.
Something like this just totally horrific happens.
Well,
it's just crazy how it just seems like it always comes back around. You think by this point we'd be able to move past this kind of stuff.
Right.
But unfortunately, it just keeps coming back.
And a lot of people, that's what kind of fuels the conspiracy theory guys. You know what I mean?
100%,
because they want to say, oh, well, it's because, you know, such and such, Kavanaugh and who's this, Epstein, you know what I mean? Nobody's talking about Epstein anymore because, you know, it's a false flag.
Well,
and they're all actors.
Talking about, you know, the leaked, the email situation with Russia and all that stuff.
Right.
It was coming out saying, oh, well, it was supposed to be someone else that potentially leaked it, not the Russians.
Right.
And then a shooting happens. I'm like, come on, let's be honest.
Right.
Like that, I don't think our government is like that dishonest, but, you know, do they do some shady shit? Yes, but I highly doubt they're just shooting people up to make us not watch the news. Like, that's crazy.
It's kind of interesting because the thing that is one of the most popular conspiracy theories is actually the thing that makes me not believe in conspiracy theories, and it's 9/11. Because you are telling me
that's such a joke
that the greatest act of terrorism that's ever been perpetrated on U.S. soil, killed over 3,000 people, was done by a guy who almost choked on a pretzel in the White House. You know what I mean?
Well, that, and I mean, how did we convince, you know, I don't remember how many attackers it was, like 13 or something like that.
There are so many.
But how do you convince people to be like, oh yeah, we're going to convince so many people that just so happen to be from the Middle East to jump on a plane, kill themselves for America's cause.
And
come on.
On top of that as well, it's like, do you know how many moving parts something like that has to have? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And nobody fucking talked. Like, I don't buy it.
No.
You know what I mean?
No chance.
So, to get into it, a lot of people don't know my stance on guns because I haven't really come forward with it, and I want to be super, forthcoming with this podcast. Like, I'm pro-gun, right? I didn't, just to give kind of some background, I didn't have much experience with guns growing up. Like, a couple of my uncles had some rifles, my dad had some long guns, but like hunting wasn't a thing. Like, we lived in Chicago, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's not like we exactly went out into the backyard and we didn't have a lot of the rural area that's down here. A lot of my friends didn't have experience with guns outside of gangbangers and things like that, pistols, handguns, you know what I mean? It's not exactly like it was so common to go out to your garage and find a 30-06,
Right.
So, what's some of your background as far as you're a pro-gun guy for sure?
So yeah, I mean, man, so people are going to hear my accent and think, "Oh, this country redneck
This
motherfucker,
fucking guy,
he's going to be up here Bible thumping, pushing
Right.
guns, all that stuff." No, but I'm definitely pro-gun, so I think like having firearms is a rite of passage. I think it's a good thing to have for yourself, but I also think for the country. Now, like for me, I'm from Southern Indiana, a little bit out in the sticks,
right?
Right.
You grew up with it. Like, did your parents?
But
Did
no,
your dad have
that's
guns?
just it. I didn't.
Okay.
Okay, I grew up around people that did. My grandpa, well, he was a big hunter.
Okay.
That's kind of where I got my interest in it, but neither my mom nor my dad really had anything to do with guns.
Right.
But I always had this interest. I had BB guns and stuff like that growing up. I got a 22 when I was young, and mom would never let me shoot it unless Papa was around.
Okay.
Well, he up and moves to Florida
Oh.
when I was, a young kid, like
Right.
2002.
Right.
So, like, I had a gun and never shot it. I shot it like one time. And when I was 18, I was going to the University of Louisville at the time. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to get me a shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
I made the horrendous mistake of not telling my parents I was going to get a shotgun.
Oh, you were still living at home at the time.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I literally
wow.
had like a 3-hour break between classes.
Yeah.
I left the campus, drove to Indiana, went to a little local gun shop, was just looking, stumbled across a great deal and ended up buying a shotgun.
What a terrible idea.
Took it home and I said, "Dad, look what I got." And he was like, "Should have probably asked me about that, shouldn't you?" And I was like, "Yep, I fucked up." But, it worked out though, guys. I mean, I had a trigger lock on it.
Right.
I always kept them separated.
You were
And
responsible
I told
with
them
it.
that from day one.
And you didn't have, were there any young kids in the house at the time?
No, I'm the youngest of 3. They were already out of the house.
Okay.
I was the only one. Now my nephews were coming around,
Okay.
but that's why I went into it. I bought a trigger lock.
Right.
It stayed stashed away where nobody could get it. Ammunition wasn't near it. It's not loaded, all that stuff. So I made sure it was good. Now they kind of came back with a rebuttal of, "Hey, like if you're going to have something like this, we want it locked up."
Okay.
And I agreed. I said, "No problem."
Mm-hmm.
So I went and bought me a gun cabinet, metal locking door with a key, hid the key, the whole 9 yards. So it stayed locked. So even more reason, the gun was in there, the ammo wasn't. So like, even if you got the gun, you still didn't know where the ammo was.
So, and we're just gonna get kind of right into it because I'm kind of gonna play devil's advocate on some of these things just because I don't want this to be an hour and a half long of guns are great, guns are great, guns are great, even if we both really do feel like that.
Right.
I kind of want to be that other dissenting kind of opinion, right?
But I think what's going to be kind of surprising for a lot of people, because when people hear, "Oh, I'm pro-gun," people think, "Oh, well, you think you should be able to have whatever you want,
Right, you think
regardless
you
of
should
what the
be able to
government
have-
says." So
Right.
we'll probably get into that here in a little bit. So I think some people are going to be kind of surprised.
Right.
But I mean, you got to think too. I sold guns for a living.
That is also true, right? You
So-
worked at Bass Pro.
So I worked at Bass Pro Shop. I didn't always work in the hunting department, but
Right.
I was always around them.
Well, that's something else that I want to get to as well. But as far as the locking mechanisms, the gun cabinets, the safes and things like that. And this is kind of something that I've struggled with as a gun owner myself because my gun's not locked. I have kids in my house. Now they're inaccessible, right?
That's the key.
But they're not locked because my mentality is if I have my guns in a safe, My guns are strictly used for home defense. If somebody comes into my house and means me and my family harm, I want to have a way. I do not want to be helpless, right? So my mentality is that guy coming into my house, should he have a firearm, he doesn't have his in a gun cabinet.
Right.
So how do we balance that responsible gun ownership with practical gun ownership?
So the good thing about that is, honestly, keeping them high where they are, never take it out, put it up in front of a kid.
Right.
Make sure no one in the house knows where it is except for the people who are going to be using it.
Right.
Kind of situation. I did that myself for the longest time. I actually built a rack in the back of my closet for a 12-gauge shotgun.
Okay.
That I had specifically set up for home defense.
Right.
The only people that knew it was there was myself, my parents, and my girlfriend who lived with us at the time.
Okay.
Well, she does now, but
yeah,
when we lived there the first time.
Yeah.
I've since gotten rid of that gun. Okay, and then I went to just strictly handguns.
Right. And that's what I own. I own a 9mm handgun.
Right. And for the longest time, I did the same exact thing. I kept one accessible. Everything else was locked up.
Okay.
So I had that one gun that's like, hey, this is always going to be here, or it's on me, one of the two.
Right.
When I left, it went with me.
Gotcha.
My parents do the same thing. They have accessible guns. Now, they're in areas of the house that kids don't go.
Right.
They're not allowed. They're so high, like literally they'd have to be a teenager to get it.
Right.
But at that point, we've already taught them how to shoot and do stuff like that.
And my son has come in and asked me, Daddy, can we see your gun? And he'll want to take it apart. He'll want to clean it and stuff like that. And just like you said, I make him leave the room. I go to where it is. I grab it. I tell him to come back in the room. I have the gun. By that time, it's completely not loaded. There's not one in the chamber. I've already racked the slide and locked it and everything like that. And
that's one thing, too, I think that is kind of important. Like, if you have kids and you're going to have firearms in the house, like I have family members, my girlfriend's brother-in-law is adamant that his kids need to handle his firearms.
Yeah.
Now, he obviously makes sure they're not loaded.
Right.
He wants them to be familiar with them. He doesn't want them to see them and think, oh shit, I'm not allowed to touch that. Because what do kids want to do?
They want to touch that.
They want to touch the things they're not allowed to touch. But if you let them do that, then the excitement's gone. So when they see it, it's no different than a pencil sitting on the table.
And that's what I wanted to do with my son. I wanted to, they say I had a high school teacher who had went to, I think it was Japan, and they have alcohol in vending machines. And he had gone up to somebody and said, well, how do you make sure that, the kids don't drink? Do you have to swipe your ID or something like that? And he goes, no, the kids just don't drink. It's been in there since they've been around. They're used to it.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, not buying it. He sits down on a little bench next to one of these vending machines. He goes, that was particularly busy. And he goes, I guarantee you I'm going to sit here in under 5 minutes, and there's going to be a kid who goes up and grabs a beer. I'm not buying it. And he said that there must have been 50 kids that had gone up in a 30-minute period, and not one of them went for anything other than a soda.
Well, you got to think too, man. They probably monitor that shit too.
Well, and
and two, there's probably a little bit of a cultural difference.
Right.
If you did do something like that,
you
their culture is the shame of the family and all that stuff. So, you don't have that problem. That's the difference with, I think, countries like that compared to the United States.
Right. And the destigmatization of it has a big thing to do with it as well, is that, I know I'm not supposed to have this. You know what I mean? And
well, yeah, because we all drank when we were underage.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You didn't try to go to the liquor store.
No.
Some people do, you either get a fake or something
ballsy.
like that. I did my fair share of it, but I was like, hey, we're going to hang out at a buddy's house, and ain't none of us driving.
Right.
We're not doing anything to potentially get ourselves caught.
And
ain't nobody going outside. We're staying inside or out back, mind our own business, having a good time. But we did it, I say responsibly. It was illegal, yes, but we weren't hurting anything.
And I knew some people who, at 16 or 17, if they were having a pool party or something like that, their dad would become, come over here, hey, Dad, can I have a beer? Take a beer. You know what I mean? Take a wine cooler.
There's always that dad or mom that's completely cool about it.
None of those kids that I know of today have alcohol problems. You know what I mean? Because they asked their dad for a beer. None of them ever got in trouble over booze. None of them ever was busted having the big parties with the, this and that. that you let the kid have a beer when he's 17, 18 years old, and you know what I mean?
It's that fine line of discipline getting on your kid, but at the same, if you push them too far, they're going to revolt.
Right.
And then you kind of push them into that stuff.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying to go out and buy your kid a 30 rack and tell him to, here's the keys of the house, I'm leaving for the weekend, have a good time.
That's how you come back to the house burnt to the ground.
Right, exactly. But, you're getting ahead of the problem. You're removing it before it comes a point of curiosity and, man, what happens when I do drink to excess, and what happens when I do touch this gun when dad comes around? I don't have to touch the gun when dad's not around.
And two, not only just desensitizing kids to that type of stuff, but the technology's came a long way too.
Right.
So my stuff isn't open anymore, but what I bought was a quick access pistol safe.
I've seen stuff like that.
So it's got a got a
3-button
combination.
Okay.
It's right there. I roll out of bed. I hit the button combination like I can do it in my sleep.
Right.
And it pops open.
Yeah.
And I've got 3 pistols there ready to go.
Right.
And
Loaded
I shoot all of them. Yeah,
right.
Every single one of them's loaded with an extra magazine.
Nice.
So I'm ready to go at any given time.
Nice.
I take a gun out, it goes right back in, and it locks. I close it back up.
A lot of these mass shooting victims, or a lot of these mass shooting perpetrators, rather, it seems haven't been brought up with that respect for the firearms,
Well, I think they don't have the respect for the firearms, but I think more importantly than anything, they don't have respect for other people.
No, there's no respect for human life there.
Exactly. And that's, I think, the essence of it.
Right.
Is really finding out why these people want to do what they do.
Right.
What caused that? Because I'm sorry, you're not born and wake up one day and just say, you know what? I'm going to go to my old high school and shoot 30 people.
Right, exactly. I'm going to go to the local elementary school and waste a bunch of first graders.
That's not a normal thought.
Right.
So it's either learned or it's triggered by something else.
And
whether it be trauma, abuse.
While we're recording this, Bernie Sanders was on Joe Rogan 2 days ago, and Joe had talked to him about this because, like I said, we're right on the heels of El Paso and of Ohio. And Sanders, who I almost disagree with nothing on.
That dude's a quack.
He's crazy. I mean, some of his stuff is super fucking out there, but he did say it's a 3-part problem. He came out, and I respected it because he came out and said, look, there is no magic answer. And anybody who tells you that there is fucking lying to you.
100%.
He said it's a problem with the people, like you said, not having respect for human life. He said it's a problem of the gun manufacturers. Right now, there is enough guns for every man, woman, and child in the United States. And he brought up a really good point. Why keep making them?
Because we keep buying them.
Right. So I guess
that's any product.
The classic question that I'll kind of pose to you is, does anybody need an automatic rifle? You know what I mean? Well,
let me ask you this. Does anybody need that brand new iPhone XS Max 512 gig?
Right. No, I mean,
you don't.
Very few people do.
Does anybody need a car with 600 horsepower?
Right.
No.
But should you be able to legislate your way out of allowing people to buy them? I don't personally think so.
I don't either. The reason I don't think that it is because I feel like that is it is a very, very slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because it's like anything, man. If you start to regulate it, you start picking and choosing.
Right.
You can, with firearms, the terms are so relative and so vague. You can change one word, and because somebody defines it in that way, you knock out a whole group of weapons based off of what somebody did, interprets that.
Right.
So, my argument, being a gun guy, I know some guns and I know how they're made.
Mm-hmm.
So, the big hot button topic is ARs.
Yeah.
AR-15s, the military-style weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Ruger makes a rifle called a Mini 14.
Okay.
Woodstock. It looks like a bolt gun, but it's a semi-automatic.
Right.
Takes the exact same ammunition. It's got a 20-round magazine stock out of the box.
Okay.
But it's considered a hunting rifle.
Interesting.
If I were to
but all of the interiors are the same as...
Well, the interiors...
very
the way they function, it's single...
One trigger pull is one
semi-automatic,
round fired.
full thing, 20-round magazine, but it looks like a rifle. Looks like it's just a regular hunting rifle.
And it's
if
not
I
as
handed
aggressive.
well, that's what people perceive it as
Right.
aggressive.
Right.
So that's just it. Like, if I sat that gun on the table and said, do you think this, like, there's been studies done. I've seen videos of people,
Yeah.
like, trying to prove this. Like, do you think of all these guns that lay out a bunch on the table,
What's the most
like, dangerous?
Right.
Or which one should be illegal?
Yeah.
People always grab the AKs.
Yep.
They grab the AR and say, these should be gone.
Right.
But I've seen them leave that Ruger Mini 14
Every
sitting
time.
there, and they'll say, well, what about this one? No, it's okay. That's a hunting rifle. But then they drop the magazine and show them, this is the bullet that this one takes. This is the bullet that this AR-15
Right.
takes.
Right.
It's the same round. They do the exact same stuff. So that's where I'm saying is, like, for me, like, I think when somebody says, oh, I don't think you should have assault weapons.
Right.
How do you define an assault weapon? Because, I mean, what do you, I mean, full automatics, I get.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. That stuff is already so highly regulated.
Right.
You have to go through an insane background check. Like, way, way deeper than to just buy a standard gun.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to have a level 2 license to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Which already, again, takes even more to get that in the first place.
Is this to get us
to buy a full automatic.
Okay.
Okay, so you have to
So
have a
you
special,
can still buy fully automatics, but you have to go through a bunch of hoops.
Special government license to buy one
Interesting.
or own one. Okay, so like you go buy, like I shit you not, there's a couple gun shops here in Jeffersonville that sell some full automatics. Okay, like
Really?
P90s, belt fed, the whole 9 yards. You're talking $15,000,
Oh,
20
wow.
grand for a rifle. I don't know of a single mass shooting other than potentially Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Which, miraculously, they won't tell us what was
used, right? Because
whether
they don't
it
want
was
the
automatic or not.
copycats
I mean,
and
I've heard
things
the
like
videos.
I'm
That
sure.
sounds like full auto to me.
Yeah.
Or I don't bump stock my ass. Those things are so inaccurate. It's not even funny.
And that was a big talking point after that. They outlawed bump stocks.
I think some of it's like statewide.
Okay.
I don't think it's across the board.
Gotcha. It's
But
not
I mean,
like
for
a
people
federal
that
thing.
don't know what a bump stock is, okay, so like when you have a stock on an AR-15, it's a rigid thing. There's a spring inside there, which is what recoils the gun. The bump stock itself slides on the handle. So what you do is when you slide the gun forward, if you hold your finger all the way back as if you're going to pull the trigger, and then you slide the stock back, your finger pulls the trigger. But if you keep the pressure forward on the gun and backward on the stock, the recoil pushes the gun forward, and it allows it to. That's how you get that high rate of fire.
Right.
But if you're
because
pushing
it's not
and,
you actually pulling, it's the recoil from the
it's
gun.
the gun
actually
bouncing
firing
back
it.
and forth into the trigger.
Okay.
The problem with that is
That's
you're
wildly inaccurate.
You're pushing and pulling.
Yeah.
You can't aim it very accurately.
Right.
So I mean, the gun's all over the place.
Not to mention, you're counting on recoil, which isn't the same. Like, it
Well, and
isn't
that's the thing,
exactly the same every shot. There's
No.
going to be little variations in the amount of gunpowder
Well,
in a bullet and
if you
things
put
like
too much
that.
pressure, like if you're pulling too hard,
Right.
it won't do it. So
Right.
it takes a lot of practice to get it done. I've seen people use bump stocks,
Right.
you know, at the gun range, and they get like 5 or 6 shots and stops.
Oh, wow.
You have to have like the right setup with,
Not to mention,
with the
that
right
shit
trick.
hurts, dude. Like,
Well, not with a 223. They really don't have that much recoil, honestly.
Okay.
But I mean, like, you have to have the right trigger setup,
Yeah.
the right pressure. Like, you have to practice quite a bit. And if you're like actively trying to shoot people,
Right.
and you know cops are coming for you, like there's no way in hell
Right.
you're gonna be able to maintain that for a sustainable amount of time
Before somebody comes
before
in
somebody
and
gets to you, or
smokes
before
your
you
ass.
fuck up, and you're not gonna be able to keep that rate. So I mean, like Las Vegas, I'm sorry, there's no way in hell that whole thing was done with a bump stock, because it
Right.
was just boom, 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 reload, and right back at the exact same rate of fire.
Yeah.
Because a bump stock is just basically hold it till it's empty.
Right.
Now, granted, I know if there's like a crowd of people, but I mean the fire was pretty directed
Yeah.
in an area.
Yeah. I mean, he got what, 54 people,
And
something
he was
like
pretty
that?
far away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, you really have to be like on a rest.
I'm going to
Shoot.
Vegas in October, and I'm really kind of I don't want to say looking forward to
check
checking
it out.
it. Just to kind of see what the vantage
you've seen the
points
pictures,
was.
you've seen the
right,
videos,
exactly.
So it's like, just to get your own idea of how did this happen.
And as sad as it is, it's almost like a historical point now. You know what I mean? Like this was the largest mass shooting in American history. You know. Now going back to what you were saying about the automatics versus the semi-autos, I've heard. And please don't give the recipe, because the last thing I need is for people to say that I was responsible for something. But I've heard, and I don't know anything about the inner workings of the mechanics of a gun. I do well just to shoot it and hit the paper half of the time, you know. I've heard that on certain firearms, it's not that difficult to make a semi-automatic into a fully automatic. I've heard that
they can be modified.
Right.
They can be modified.
Between like shaving some clips down on the inside of things and whatnot. Like
there's a couple internal pieces that can be shaved down to get it. Mm-hmm. So, and I've seen this done on a couple different TV shows. There was a TV show on Discovery. It was Red Jacket Firearms is what the company was.
Gotcha.
And they specialized in custom builds. They did tanks, friggin' mortars.
Now, this wasn't that Guntucky show, was it?
No. This was a different one. Now, the guy ended up getting arrested for some shady shit that he apparently did to his daughters, which was pretty fucked up.
Oh, wow.
But when the show was on, none of that was in the lights. Like, I used to watch it. Yeah. And they had a couple gunsmiths who would take semi-automatic guns and convert them to automatic. Gotcha. Now, granted, they had the licenses. They had all that shit to do it.
Right.
But if you watch them doing it, I mean, it's very precise machining.
Right.
And like they would do it, put the gun back together, and it wouldn't fire. It would fire one time and then jam.
Oh.
It's like they had to keep doing it. Now, are there people out there that know how to do it? Yes. But it's not something that you can just research online and just knock it down with a Dremel.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
It's pretty precise.
Yeah, you're not taking a metal file and turning your semi-auto into a full auto. Okay.
Now, I mean, there's some stuff I'm sure you could probably buy on the dark web, rebuild it, do
but I mean, you can buy children on the dark web.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's already illegal.
Right.
Like, that's the whole part.
So, coming from Chicago, it is easier now, but definitely when I was growing up, you had things like the 3-day waiting period. You had for handguns. Yes.
Yeah.
You had registration that had to be done on every firearm. Right. You had, they didn't have conceal and carry when I was a kid.
That's pretty recent for Illinois.
Yeah.
Like
I don't even think they had.
They just started doing that in the last
carry.
few years. No, oh God, no. They were super against it. Like they're one of the strictest in terms of guns. Like you would have people would leave Illinois, come to Indiana to buy guns. Now, here's where people get it twisted because they don't know gun laws. Mm-hmm. You cannot buy a handgun out of state
legally.
You cannot you can't go to Bass Pro Shop. Like if you lived in Chicago, you could not come to Indiana, go to a Bass Pro Shop, and buy a handgun and take it.
Right.
Because when you're buying a handgun, the paperwork has to be done within the state that you reside.
Right.
So now what you can do is you can purchase it. They ship it to an FFL dealer in Illinois. They run your background check. If everything's good, you pick the gun up there.
Right. So I go to this place, shout out to TGG, Tactical Guns and Gear is the name of this place, and it is in Louisville. And at that place, you can rent different handguns. That's the way that I found mine. I tried one. It was a Glock, just because you hear so much about Glock.
That's my jam, man.
And a lot of people love them, and they fire every single time. And that's what I was looking for. The last thing that I need is when I really need this fucking thing to fire after maybe not picking it up after, 3 to 6 months or something like that. I need this thing to go bang.
Yep.
And so I was looking at the Glock for that. And to me, it felt really boxy. And I didn't quite like the way that it just sat in my hand.
Yeah.
It just wasn't that comfortable. Went bang every time, didn't have a fail to fire, no misfire, nothing. But it just, the aesthetics of it weren't that pleasing to me.
That's important. When you're buying a gun, that's extremely
how
important.
it
You have
feels
to be comfortable
and everything
with it.
like
If
that.
you're not comfortable, you won't shoot it.
Right. And so I ended up settling on a Ruger 9mm, the SR9C. And
I got one of those too. Those are good guns.
No, yeah, you know what? And I'm really super happy with it. Knock on wood, I've never had a fail to fire yet. You know what I mean? I've gone out and shot it several times, and I like the way that it feels in my hand. I like the weight. I like the recoil distribution. I like all of that. And so when I went to Tactical Guns, they ended up having an SR9C. And I said, yeah, I want that. And I give him my license, and he's like, whoa, like, all right, so this is what has to happen. You got to go do this, this, and this.
Exactly.
And the responsible gun owner in me was like, all right, that's fair. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool.
It's not a problem.
And so I ended up going over here to, everybody calls it the old Kiesler's. And I wasn't even around when it was Kiesler's.
It was Kiesler's, then it was Orion.
Orion
Now
Arms.
it's Kentucky and a gun store.
Okay.
They've changed their names a couple
Right,
times.
just different ownership and things like that. Well, I was there when it was Orion Arms.
Yeah.
And I go in, and I don't want to, make myself the mark. Like, I want to kind of look around and see what I'm looking at. And so the very first thing I asked the guy was, I said, this is the kind of gun that I'm looking at, blah, blah, blah. He tells me all about it. I said, okay, cool. And they ended up having one there. And so I wanted to kind of get everything all done at one shot, get a bunch of ammo for it, get everything. And so I said, yeah, I'm looking for ammo. And he looks back at me, and in a joking manner, he goes, you shooting paper or people? And I was like, well, that's an interesting way to phrase that question, and he's fucking around.
That's just it. He's fucking around with you. But at the same time, if you were planning on shooting somebody, you would probably be like, what?
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, they use that like themselves.
Almost as like if I didn't have a reaction to it, I'm sure it would have kind of set off a little. That's a really good point.
And that's where, dude, if you're selling guns, it's kind of at your discretion. It's kind of your responsibility to feel people out.
Right.
And if you get a bad feeling about it, you just say, hey, man, I tell you what, I don't feel comfortable sending you some ammo right now.
Right.
Come back here in a few days, and we can get you set up.
Right.
Now, it doesn't stop anybody from going across the street, going
no,
to a
but at
different
least
gun
it's not, and we're going to talk about that too. It's not on your conscience type of a thing,
No.
And so, I said, no, you know what? I'm going to hopefully never use it for people, but this is a home defense gun. I said, but I'm going to be doing some target practice. So give me a little bit of both. He gives me a couple boxes of some hollow point ammo, and then he gives me just some target, dirty Remington ammo, you know? And so, I go, there was a off-duty police officer who I guess works like security there, right? And he's kind of at the front door. I have my gun. It's in the box. Got my ammo. I'm all good, get a little holster and things like that. I got the red dot sight. Like, I got the whole thing, right? And so I go up to the off-duty police officer. I go, look, I'm from Chicago. Down there, up there, from where we are, up there, you have to keep the firearm in one place, you have to keep the magazine in another place, and then you have to keep the ammunition in another place, like in differently accessible parts of the car. So typically, you put the firearm in the glove box, you put the ammo in the trunk,
or and you put concealed carry.
Right. So you have to have it completely taken apart, and in three different. I think they classify it as different compartments. If something's in the glove box, you have to have something in the trunk, and then you have something in the back seat, or what have you.
That's mainly so you can't, like, if you were to get pulled over or something like that, you can't just pop a magazine in it and you're good to go.
A road rage incident or something like that. And so I said, how do I have to transport this in order for me not to get in trouble? Should I be speeding or have a headlight out or something stupid? You know what I mean? I don't exactly want to be caught with a fully, with a fully loaded pistol. It doesn't make things easier in an altercation with a police officer. And
now, let me ask you, did you have your permit at the time?
I did not. I still don't.
Okay.
I still don't.
So, I mean, that was smart for you to ask that question.
Yeah, because I don't want to, I have the holster there, but I still really didn't know all the laws either. Like, does open carry require a permit? I just lived here. I just moved here, and I didn't know any laws other than Chicago, where there were no permits at all, open carry or concealed carry. Right. So it was never a thing, And so I asked my full question, and he kind of smiles to himself, and he goes, son, this is Southern Indiana. I don't care if you ride around with it on your lap. He was completely serious, Now,
here's the thing. So, like, in Indiana, like, you have to have a concealed carry.
Right.
To have it on you, right? Mm-hmm. You can have a gun in your home. You can take it to the range. You can shoot it. Right. Okay? But they're kind of the same way. You can't have a loaded gun in the glove box if you don't have a concealed carry. Yeah. Because it's concealed.
It's considered concealed.
It's kind of concealed.
Interesting. Okay.
It can be, like, you might find one officer that's, like, because it can be at their discretion.
Right.
So, like, I've had people.
You could ride around with it. I couldn't.
Right. But I've got my permit. So, like, I had went through the full background check, waited several months, got my license, all that good stuff. So, I mean, at this point, with a license, you can pretty much, I mean, you can throw a gun on your back,
Right.
technically, and be perfectly fine.
Right. And I know some
Now,
people
some
who
states,
do that.
like, dude, for real, like, you can carry an AR over your shoulder. Now, granted,
Depending on
really,
what color you are.
No, regardless, is that very smart?
Right.
Hell no.
Because you're
Because you're
drawing
gonna have
so
people-
much attention to yourself.
Well, and that's what people, and I've seen the videos of these people walking up and down the streets with ARs on.
Right.
And cops stop them.
Right.
I've seen them
And
with
then
white.
they go on, I got my Second Amendment.
Right,
you can't
right.
stop me for
You
anything. I'm
know,
not answering questions. And,
I've seen it
I'm
with
not
white
discussing
dudes.
my day.
I've seen it with black dudes.
Right.
And, it's always like, oh, they stopped him because he was black. No, they stopped him because he
has
had an AR on his back.
back.
They're going to stop you and say, what are you
fuck
doing?
are you doing? Right.
Now, at the
Right.
end of the day, if you just say, absolutely, because they're going to say, put the gun down.
Right.
They're going to take it off, sit it on the ground, clear it. They're going to check you. They're going to check the gun.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're going to tell you, hey, this is extremely dangerous.
Right. What you're
Because
doing
if
is stupid.
somebody thinks that you're being hostile in some way, shape, or form, like, it could be deemed self-defense for them to pull out their legally concealed gun and shoot your ass.
Right.
So, like,
And that's just not a game I want to play.
No.
You know what I mean?
so every law enforcement officer that I know and have seen, they're going to question it. They're going to give it back to you and say, hey, you probably shouldn't do this.
Right.
Now, some places may even take it for public safety.
Really?
They'll take it to the station and say,
And you
hey,
have to pick it up
you
there?
can come pick it up.
Fair enough.
Dude, I've seen it, like, there was a dude walking around one
That's
time
fair.
on Live PD. I don't know if you guys watch this.
Oh, yeah, I love Live
I
PD.
laughed my ass off. He was in Jeff walking around with a fucking samurai sword and a bunch
In
of knives.
Jeff?
Yeah. Dude he said there was a guy looking for him, threatening to beat his ass.
For everybody listening, I know a lot of people are listening from out of state. Jeffersonville is the neighboring city to my city, and this was one of the cities that was featured on Live PD for about 2 years or so?
Yeah, they did it for about 2 years,
Yeah.
and then they finally pulled out.
So it was always exciting when you would see Live PD when they were in Jeffersonville, because the great likelihood was that just a couple of days ago you were right in front of that Brown's Chicken or whatever it was. You know what I mean? So
But, I mean, dude, they straight up got a call about this dude. They come and find him, question him. He basically said, yeah, somebody's out to whoop my ass.
right,
So I got this for protection. So what do? He says, dude, I can't let you walk around with this. You already said you're looking for somebody. Like, if they did stumble across you, I ain't trying to have you hack somebody's arm off.
right. No,
So
absolutely.
they collected them, said, you just come by the station. You can collect these, but I'm not going to let you walk around with them.
That's fair.
End of the day, the guy was like, all right, fair enough.
Right,
Guy left, went home. He was compliant. Everything went on.
Right.
That could happen with a gun, but some people are testy about their gun rights, so they don't
Right.
want to just simply let them talk, let them, ask their questions, whatever, and you go on about your day.
now I've never been stopped with a cop, with a handgun on me or anything like that. But in every time I've been pulled over or anything like that, anytime I'm cool with the cop, he's been cool with me. I don't think you can have that job and not be a little bit of an asshole.
Well, because you got to think, dude, when you're a police officer or anybody of that nature, you're dealing with people at their absolute worst.
Right.
Not just, people in an extreme time of need, like people having a heart attack, and you're the one that comes up and you're expected to do something.
Right.
So you do experience that. So, I mean, does it have the very high propensity to change you? Sure.
It would have to.
It's like the military.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't, some
go
people
away
can
for
go into
4
the
years.
military, can do the whole thing, have to kill people, the whole 9 yards, come back. They struggle with it.
Right. Right.
The ones that get help, and understand like why they had to do what they had to do, they're able to overcome it.
Right. All right. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit with you and put you on the hot seat a little bit. When I did go and purchase this gun, I said, so what's the protocol? Do you guys have a waiting period? Do you have do I have to come back in 3 days? Do I give you the money now? Do I give you the money then? Like, how do we proceed from here? And the guy goes, no, dude, you give me $400. I give you this gun and you walk out. And even to me, as a staunch gun guy, I felt like that was too easy. Everybody always wants to throw around that common sense gun control. What's common sense gun laws or gun reform?
There ain't no damn common sense is the problem.
Common sense isn't common anymore.
I mean, so the wait period that kind of started out was crime of passion kind of situation. Like
I'm pissed off. I want to go.
I
get
found
a gun.
out my wife's cheating on me. I'm gonna
Right.
kill that motherfucker.
Right.
You go buy a gun and be done with it. So the 3-day wait period, even you've said in Illinois, it was on handguns only.
Yeah.
Okay. If I really, really wanted to kill somebody, I was to that level, and they say, hey, you got to wait 3 days, I would probably already know that. Okay, give me the 12 gauge.
Right. So what about a 3-day waiting
done.
period on all guns?
I mean, I don't think it would be a bad idea.
If you know you're going out hunting and you can't see 3 days into the future and think, okay, well, this is what I got to do in order to get a gun and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of a situation where I would need a gun that day.
No.
Other than for something like defense of, hey, I've been fucking this guy's wife and, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I know he has guns, so I need a gun in order to defend myself should he come over to my house.
Which, that's an anomaly.
Right.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
Right.
Like, if we had wait periods, again, because, like, if you're just buying a gun for the sake of buying a gun, what's 3 days?
Yeah.
Not really a big deal.
And I would say that most gun owners, most responsible gun owners, which is most gun owners, in my opinion, would be cool with a 3-day waiting period.
Yeah.
And I think
that's considered a cool down period, is all it is.
Right. And what I think more than anything is, and kind of what my goal in this is, I think it would shut a lot of people up who are like, well, we want something done. All right, why don't we give you 3-day waiting periods? We're all cool with that anyway. You good with that?
That's the problem, dude.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
That's the problem. That, we all say that there's a problem.
Right.
Okay, violence is an issue right now.
Right.
Nobody wants to meet in the middle.
No, they all want their way.
Right. So that's where, honestly, dude, I know a lot of, like, gun people, me being one of them, that says the system we have, does it work? Yes. Is it perfect? No.
No, not by a long shot.
Okay. Now, I think the biggest reason it doesn't work is because these different databases and stuff that people have crime or they're convicted of this, convicted of that, isn't shared.
Right.
If they expanded on the background check, expand on the different departments communicating,
right,
a lot of this would get caught. These people who are buying guns who technically shouldn't have been able to, but because they did something X number of years ago while they were in the military,
right,
the military didn't relay that over. They weren't criminally convicted, so it slipped through the cracks. Which I was reading on the most recent event. I can't remember if it was Texas or Ohio.
I think Ohio was after Texas.
There was one of the shooters, by law, according to the code we have now, would have been ineligible to buy a gun.
Really?
Because of stuff that was done years ago. Like, I'm pretty sure he had a history of domestic violence against his wife and an infant at one point, if I recall properly.
Oh, wow.
I apologize, I don't remember which one.
Right,
I was kind of briefly reading it, but that's what kind of is appalling to me. Because the system we have would have worked if that stuff had simply been relayed over.
Right.
It would have been blocked from the get-go.
So you have the goal of becoming a police officer. How much psychological background check, if you want to call it that, how much of a psychological test did you have to go through for that?
You have to go through a pretty extensive questionnaire. I mean, I'm not going to go into detail on it.
Right.
But I mean, you have to go through quite a bit of questioning.
Could you put a time on it? Were you in a room with somebody for an hour, 2 hours?
No, it's more of a test.
Okay.
You have to answer a bunch of questions. Then a psychologist looks at your answers.
Right. 100 questions? Is that a fair assessment? Maybe
a lot more.
A lot more.
Yeah, it's a couple hours.
How would you feel about psychological testing for anybody who wants to own a gun?
I would say,
I
feel like that would be a little too far.
You think so?
Because
that's a fair answer.
And the reason being, I mean, who's going to do it?
Right.
Who's going to fund it? There's a lot of variables to that.
Okay.
Now, it's already in the paperwork.
Right.
If you have been admitted into a mental institution or anything like that.
Right.
Okay, when you purchase a firearm, there's a 4473 you have to fill out.
Okay.
The normal gun paperwork.
Right.
It's coast to coast.
And this is the background check.
That's the standard stuff.
Okay.
There's a list of questions. And if I recall properly, it's been a few years, but there was one that you should answer yes to, and the rest should be no.
Okay.
If you answer any of those as yes, it's an automatic.
You're done.
It kicks you out.
Yeah.
You can't purchase a gun.
From that store, from that location,
no, in
forever?
General. Well, in general.
Okay. And
now,
are these the questions have you ever thought about hurting yourself or somebody else with a firearm?
No, it's not like that. It's have you ever been convicted of a felony?
Gotcha. Are you an American citizen?
Yeah. Have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor of domestic violence?
Okay.
So it's general questions, but I mean, it's stuff that would be in your criminal history to begin with.
Okay.
That's where I think if they simply somebody who was in a mental institution or had some type of psychological issue, that's something that should be in your record.
Right.
Like if you were to get stopped by the police and they're going to run your information, they should know, hey, this dude's got a history of schizophrenia.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a surprise to them.
Right.
They should know that to get go. So I think like if they just simply expand what they have, expand the database to not just go for criminal side, but also your mental health side,
right,
would fix a lot of that.
So are there any gun laws on the books right now that you feel are too restrictive or should be lessened?
I don't know, not federally, because I'd say like federally, I mean, it's pretty broad. A lot of that stuff's to the state.
Okay.
So, and it's kind of weird because like
and you seem like a big states' rights guy.
You can have, not really though. That's the thing. I really think it should be across the board.
Really?
I think it's kind of stupid
if
that
you have a concealed, because that's the other thing. And a buddy of mine was going down to Florida, and he was shooting with some friends down in Florida. And within the states, this was already by the time that Illinois had concealed carry. And between the states that he had to cross from Chicago down to Florida, he was going through like Indiana and Kentucky and Tennessee and blah, blah, blah. He was carrying his gun half the time, and then half the time that state didn't recognize his concealed carry permit.
Right. Well, see, like, so that's...
What the hell is up with that?
So that's where... And it's kind of stupid, okay? So like, I understand...
It seems stupid.
I understand that, like, different states have different regulations. They have different requirements to get your license.
Okay.
So, like, I have family live in Tennessee.
Okay.
They actually have to go through a full safety course.
Really?
Like, an 8-hour safety course, and they have to shoot on a range.
Okay.
Like, you have to pass this little test. Now, it's not hard by any means. Like,
now, that to
it's
me
like 5
also...
yards.
Okay.
It's nothing like you could probably be legally blind and
right.
This is the target. You point the gun and shoot it, and you're
right.
fine. But I mean, like certain states have the right to not reciprocate your license. So for the longest time, Ohio,
to me it should be a federal thing.
Ohio wasn't recognized by Indiana.
Really?
So like,
and that's a neighboring state,
right? So like, I had an Indiana permit.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't carry my gun in Ohio.
Yeah, that's retarded
I could carry it in Kentucky.
Right.
No problem.
Right.
Now, Illinois was one of those that they only issue handgun permits to residents.
Yeah.
If you were out of state, you couldn't carry your gun in there.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't recognize anybody's. And there were several states that were like that. Illinois was the hot button topic, for us here locally because they're right next door. Some of that has changed. Now, there was ways to circumvent this.
Right.
Okay, so say I had an Indiana permit, Ohio didn't recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
I could get an out-of-state license in, like, Utah if they reciprocated that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I could carry my permit from Indiana as a resident. I could carry an out-of-state for a different state. I could go into Ohio and carry my gun because I have this state, which they do recognize.
Right.
Which probably stems from who paid who to get
right.
this law in the books, which is
right.
a joke.
And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. So there's 2 lobbies that I would really like to get out of politics. And that's the gun lobby and the pharmaceutical lobby. And the pharmaceutical
there shouldn't be lobbying in general.
Listen to my well, no,
for a corporation to say, "Hey, we want you to push this and we'll give you X number of dollars."
Right.
You're literally like structured fraud.
Right. Right.
You're buying votes that way, which is what democracy is supposed to not have.
You're buying legislation.
Right. You're buying support. So whether that candidate believes it or not,
right,
they'll say it because they're getting an exuberant amount of money.
It's just such a part of American politics now. Like the entire landscape would have to change.
But that's just it. Just because it's the norm, does that mean it's okay?
Right.
Does that mean it can't be changed?
I mean, that's the argument made by guys like Bernie Sanders. Just because capitalism is the way that we have things now doesn't mean. And I feel about Bernie and a lot of other anti-gun liberals like him. And I use the term liberal and not leftist. I go based on the Ben Shapiro thing. You're liberal if I believe you're a good American and you're just doing things that you believe would make America a better place, and we just happen to disagree. Leftists, I think they don't care about America. They don't care about, our laws. They want to just open borders and no guns, and you know what I mean? And I don't feel that these people in particular are very good Americans. That's just my take on it. But going back to the reciprocation, what if we had the staunchest of the states that do allow concealed carry? Whatever their mandates are, you have to go to the range with the gun. You have to have X amount of hours of instruction. You have to show, how you take down your gun, clean it, blah, 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 in front of an instructor and everything like that. And then just, all right, now it's a federal thing. Everybody has concealed carry around, and we took the most difficult laws to get around of each of the states. We combined them into one. Everybody should be cool with this. You can't have it unless you do 30 hours at a range and blah, 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 and get your sheet signed and everything like that. As far as the mental health evaluations, make them 2 hours and make them $100. Make them part of buying the gun. You know what I mean?
And that's
how you can pay for it.
If you want to do that, yeah, I'm totally okay with it.
I just feel like you shouldn't be able to go in with $400 and no criminal record just based on, circumstance or whatever, and be able to walk out with a gun with as much hollow point ammo as you want. Like, it bothers me.
But see, that's where too, like, with the law, like with the background check that we already have, if they would simply include people's psychological history.
Right.
With that background check,
yeah,
that problem could pretty much solve itself with the system we already have.
Right.
Now, granted, does it need to be beefed up? Absolutely. I think, like, going to a standardized, background check, federally, handgun permits be recognized federally. Like, gun laws are kind of one of those things that's kind of weird. Like, they have federal laws, but state laws can override those somehow.
Right.
Which I think is kind of stupid in my opinion, but
it's a vestige from when you didn't really have cohesiveness between the states, and the states were kind of created as almost like a community of, okay, you do what's best for your people, and then we'll handle the big things. You know what I mean?
But that's where I'm thinking, like, it's time for this stuff to change a little bit.
Yeah.
There's no reason for Illinois to be like, you can't have guns at all.
Right.
You can't have a permit at all. But then the very next state over is like, I'm perfectly okay with it.
There was a stabbing spree in California today. Speaking of states with ridiculous gun laws, some guy ran around for 2 hours stabbing people in California.
Well, if they had looser gun laws, somebody probably shot his ass.
Right. So that's the other thing that I'm glad you said that. Because you always hear, a man killed 4 in a stabbing rampage that lasted hours. He was arrested at a 7-Eleven in Southern California. 4 dead, 2 wounded.
Now, let me ask you this.
That's not very many people to stab in something between hours. You know what I mean?
He was able to do it for hours, that's why he didn't get caught.
I guess so, yeah.
Stab 1 or 2 people and
run
run
off.
And then
run
jump
off.
in a car, drive off, 5 miles down the road, do it again.
But this is what I wanted to talk to you about. So you always hear that kind of old adage of the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. El Paso is known for guns. Texas in general. There's guns everywhere. Why didn't anybody stop this guy in Walmart? Not to mention that at Walmart, they sell guns. You know what I mean?
Right, but that doesn't. But you got to think too. It's all chance of where those people are.
So you break the fucking glass, you grab a shotgun, you say, "I'll pay for it later, but let me handle this shit right quick." You know what I mean? Let me put a 12 gauge in this fucking guy's face.
But that's when you open the door for somebody who shouldn't have a gun,
right?
Has one, and shoots the wrong person by accident. Now, guess whose fault it is?
Right.
So that's why corporations can't do that, won't do that, because they're going to get sued to the point that they can't operate.
And I understand, is Walmart a gun-free zone? I bet it is.
No, it's not.
No?
Now, well, I mean, certain places can.
Right.
Any business reserves the right to say you can't have firearms here.
Right.
Now, they can't have you arrested or anything like that.
Right. They can just
simply
ask you
to leave. Now, if you don't leave, now granted, they can have you arrested for trespassing.
Put trespassing
but
on
that's
you,
about
right.
it. But
so
that's one of those situations, it's just kind of luck of the draw of who's there when it happens
right.
kind of situation. Now, I know...
I would think that somebody in that Walmart was packing.
Yeah, but if you're all the way in the back side of the store and you're with your family...
I ain't walking up to
I'm going to make sure my family's safe.
Right.
That's why I carry a gun.
Right.
Now, granted, don't get me wrong. If something's happening right in front of me and I have the opportunity and the ability to be able to neutralize the situation, not hurt anybody, and stop what's going on...
Right.
I'm the type of person that will 100% do it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, if I'm in the back of the store and I hear gunfire, I have no clue what's going on. I don't know how many people there are.
Right. You're staying your ass in the back of the store.
I'm not in a position to where I can advance forward and do something. Law enforcement obviously does.
Right.
Okay, they're going to have body armor. They're going to have enhanced
But you're
firepower,
just going to
multiple
the
people.
fucking Walmart to pick up a pack of paper
and
towels.
You got to think,
like,
too, like, I step in, cops then come in, I'm trying to stop this guy. They see a guy with a gun, guess who just got shot?
right.
So that's why a lot of cops will say, hey, don't get involved if you're not directly involved.
Right. I guess I feel like I hear all of this tough talk of, oh, if I was there, you heard this in Aurora a lot,
That's
with
that's
the
any
theater, with the
situation.
Batman shooting. Oh, well, if I was there, I'd have smoked that fucking guy. No, you probably wouldn't have, dude. You'd have been shitting your pants.
Because, I mean, that's one of those situations, like, you don't know how you're going to react.
Until you're in the
Until you're in it.
situation.
Now, you hope you've got the intestinal fortitude to do what you got to do to make sure that you protect yours and your family, and hopefully everybody else around you. But
Right.
at that time, you couldn't carry a gun in a movie theater.
Right, and it's
Because,
one
like,
of those
I can even
things-
say in Clarksville, movie theaters were the same way. On the door, no weapons, no knives, no guns, no nothing.
Right.
Which I never really understood. Like, okay, like, why? Who's going to come in here shooting up until Aurora happened?
Right.
But the funny part was, Aurora happened, those stickers came down.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
could carry, because I remember I was dating a girl at the time. Shortly after Aurora happened, we were going to go see a movie. I don't remember what it was, but I told my mom, I was like, I'm just not, with all this shit going on, like, people get inspired by people doing stupid stuff. I was
Right,
like,
and
I don't
there's
really
always
feel safe about it.
There's always the copycats and the this and that. You know what I mean?
So I told her, I said, hey, I know they have no guns in there. I'm carrying mine. I concealed it. I put it inside my waistband, and I kept my jacket on. Mm-hmm. I just didn't take my jacket off. But I made sure it was available because given the situation, I was going to make sure that me and who I was with
Was safe.
was going to be safe. That's
Yep.
that's the reason for me having a firearm.
Yeah.
That's why I keep it. That's why I shoot with it. That's why I make sure I'm proficient with it,
Right.
so that if something does happen, I can rely on the training that I've done and the
Right.
shooting that I've done, that I won't freeze and I won't miss.
Right. Right.
So
and that's
the duty of a firearm holder or a carry. Someone with concealed carry. You can't just go buy a concealed carry and then just carry it and think, I know what I'm doing.
right. No, you have to
go shoot.
Go out
You
and
have
shoot
to be
with it and
familiar.
everything like that.
And they tell you don't just shoot standing. Like, don't just shoot it at 5 feet.
Right.
Shoot sitting down, shoot laying down.
That's why I wish, man, and it's a weird thing to wish, but my gun, as you know, you've shot it before, the same type of gun. I almost wish it would misfire once, just so that I could. God forbid, you can make it
Here's
misfire.
how you do it. You rack the slide.
Uh-huh.
Drop the magazine, rack the slide so it's empty.
Okay.
Put the chamber in it. Put the magazine in it.
Oh.
Draw.
Uh-huh.
Pull the trigger. It's going to go click.
Yeah.
Your first reaction should be rack that slide.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I know a couple guys, a friend of ours, he used to be a reserve officer
Uh-huh.
for Clark County. And their training was, if you have a misfire, you rack the slide twice.
Okay.
So
Makes sense.
to eject whatever's in there, hopefully. But then when it comes in, that next shell, if there's still something in there, when you jack that,
Yeah.
that shell should knock out whatever obstruction's in there, and you're back in.
And then you're back in.
When you're in the heat of the moment, you're going to fall back to your training. You're going
Right.
to fall back to what you're used to.
And what you've done, hopefully, hundreds of times before,
Thousands.
Yeah, really.
Thousands. And that's where I think, for us, we've got crime around here quite a bit. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of shootings.
No.
We don't have a lot of officer-involved shootings.
No.
They do a lot of training. Mm-hmm. Not just at the academy. They come back and the departments are like, hey, we got to stay up on this
And
stuff.
especially now in today's climate with, all it takes is one guy to put a stain on your department and all of a sudden, you know what I mean?
But that's the bad part, like, in the world that we live today with social media and the internet. Like,
right.
You see that one or two incidents that people can pluck out and they go viral.
And
They don't see the time the
sometimes
video-
it's even out of context. Now, sometimes it's not, like you said, which
right.
I agree, some cops are just dicks. But sometimes it's out of context or, you know what I mean?
I would say more often than not.
Right. No,
Because
I would
you
agree.
get a snippet.
It's this whole gotcha culture. Like, I caught you
Right.
being bad, I caught you doing something, so now I'm going to capitalize
you
on
can
it and
roll
get a
up
million
on-
views.
You can roll up on a scene as a pedestrian. See a situation of a person at gunpoint, see them get shot, and it's, oh my God, I can't believe they just shot him.
Right.
You missed the
that
15
happened
minutes
before.
that led
Right.
up to that,
Right.
where he's threatening people, he's waving a gun around.
Right. He's reaching for his waistband or something like that.
Perfect video. it's been out for several years.
Mm-hmm.
There was a gentleman, he was wanted, he had a warrant, he was known to be armed and dangerous, the whole 9 yards. He has a gun in his hand, he's got a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of corner him
Right.
around a house. So you have a couple officers at the front of the house taking cover behind the front corner.
Right.
He's in the driveway next to him. There's also officers behind. Okay? The first video that comes out and everybody went schizo
Yeah.
is the front angle. He sits the gun on the ground, and all you see is them unload on him.
I do remember this video.
But then they slow it down, and you hear one of the officers in the back yell gun.
Yep.
Well, then later, the body cam footage comes out of the back. The dude had a pistol in the small of his back.
Yep.
As he's sitting the rifle down, he's grabbing this pistol.
Yep.
So the officers behind yell gun.
Yep. And boom,
and
boom,
in
boom.
that situation, if it comes out, somebody yells gun.
Completely right thing
fire.
to do.
But then that's the problem. The damage was already done.
Right. Right.
At this point, it's already went viral.
Right.
These people don't go back in and see the follow-up.
No.
That's where...
Because they heard what they wanted. You know,
they saw
heard,
it, and this was terrible, and then they went on to the next thing.
Right.
So that's where, like, I wish people would do a little bit more research on a situation like that.
Right.
If you see something crazy, you see something terrible, read into it before you make your conclusion.
Right. No,
Don't get one little thing and then jump to conclusion, because if it's wrong, you can't apologize for it.
Right.
It's already done.
It's already done. That man's name has already been slandered all over the internet. He probably isn't even a police officer anymore.
Right. And I mean, are there instances where this has happened and it wasn't a gun?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Happened, but I will say it's happened at a far less rate than
Who's
it ever
that kid,
has before.
Tamir Rice, 12 years old, playing with a BB gun? And, I mean, he looked older. He still didn't look like an adult. You know what I mean? By any means, he's 12.
And that's where, dude, and I've been saying this for years. I'm sorry. BB guns?
Quit letting your kids play BB guns.
No, don't make the manufacturers, dude, don't make them look like a freaking gun.
Right.
Paint them fuckers orange.
Right, the whole thing, not just the tip. You know what I mean?
Something.
The whole fucking thing.
Because, I mean, all these kids are coming out with airsoft guns. They look like ARs. They look like AKs, and they're like to scale.
Right.
Right?
Some of the AR, or some of the airsoft guns, the handguns, look just like my gun.
And they're black.
I mean, look just
They're
like my
black.
gun. Yeah.
I've got a few that look like a gun, and I shit you not, if you weren't sitting on top of it and you picked it up,
Right.
you know, now granted, if I pointed it at you and you really looked at it, you could see that the barrel's significantly smaller than it actually should be.
But if I'm in a situation where I'm a police officer,
exactly,
I can't take the time to look at that barrel.
no, because
I have
you're
to
gonna,
make a decision.
You're going to get shot.
Right.
If I make the wrong decision, I don't go home.
Right.
And I think that's where some people kind of forget that these people are put in extremely difficult decisions that they have to make at the drop of a hat.
I completely agree.
So I just wish some people would have a little bit more understanding about it. And I think we get so caught up in what we see on the media.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, is like any gun crime or gun violence you hear about.
Right.
So like this, you know, the Texas and Ohio, terrible situations, right? Uncalled for, stupid, idiotic, should have never happened.
Gives a terrible name to gun owners.
But it happens.
Right.
And it's going to be topic number 1 for the next 6 months.
Right.
People will hold on to that.
Right.
But at the same exact time, you're from Chicago, you know how this shit goes down. You've got multiple killings every day.
47 this weekend.
Every night.
47 shootings this past weekend, and it'll be another 47 next weekend.
But those don't make the news.
No.
We don't care about those. That's my issue with the whole, like, gun violence argument.
Why does it matter that it was in one place, in this place, and it was in a city in the other? Why is this dominating the news and the other one isn't?
There's not an equal outrage for the loss of life.
Right. You think it's because it's black kids that are doing it? That are dying?
Well,
and that are committing the murders? That can
be some of it.
Admittedly.
But, so that's kind of, like, from my perspective, what I've noticed is, like, say you have two individuals that are in an argument and they end up shooting each other.
Right.
If the two individuals are black, it doesn't make the news.
No.
Because it's expected.
Right.
That's what people are, they're like, oh, it happens.
And among racial lines, at almost the exact same rates, when a white guy is killed, it's by another white guy. And when a black guy is killed, it's by another black guy. Right. Like, that's just how it goes.
But we don't care.
Right.
Because we're numb
because
to
when
it.
it's a bunch of blonde-haired kids at Sandy Hook from, where was that, Connecticut?
It was I can't
Something like
yeah,
that,
it was up
yeah.
in it was like New Hampshire or something
Yeah,
like that.
right. When it's a bunch of white kids from the Pacific Northeast, it just tugs at your heartstrings a little bit more than a black kid on the south side of Chicago for whatever reason.
Well, that if you see a white guy shoot a
generally.
black guy, your first initial thought is he must have shot him because he was black.
Right.
There's
Right.
no backstory to it. And we're already making assumptions.
And then we're trying to go backwards from the conclusion, which I know me and you have talked about.
So, and it's the same situation if a black guy shoots a white guy or anything like that. It shouldn't matter. That's just it.
I agree.
When you report that someone's killed, it shouldn't matter what color they are.
No, I completely
If the news simply said there was two individuals in a heated argument, guns were drawn and somebody is dead.
Right.
And people said that is absolutely terrible. I will agree with you.
Yeah.
If you come out and say, "Oh, there was a black man slaughtered by a white man," okay, you just lost the whole reason people want change.
Yeah.
Because you made it a race thing when it probably had absolutely nothing to do with race to begin with.
Right. Right.
Now, I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist.
Right.
It does.
Obviously.
And it's extremely stupid and idiotic that we should still even have to talk about this kind of stuff. It's just asinine to me. Because I don't look at another person based off the way they look and think, oh, I should be scared for my life.
No.
I base that assumption off of your actions.
And interestingly enough, with the overwhelming white population of southern Indiana, I find less racism here than where I came from in Chicago.
So I had a conversation with someone at one time, and I said, okay, they made the comment that I should not go into the west end of Louisville at night.
Yeah.
That I would get mugged, beat up, or probably shot.
Right.
Okay? Just on the premise of they said I look like a cop.
You do kind of look like a cop.
Dude, I had a full beard at the time.
Right.
Okay?
Oh, okay. Yeah. This was then.
So then I said, okay, so where's really the problem here?
Right.
I said, so let's flip the script.
Right.
You think I'm from Boondocks, Indiana.
Right.
Everybody must be racist. Dude, I get labeled being a racist because I've got an accent and I'm from Southern Indiana where it's predominantly white.
Right.
And I said, okay, let's flip the script. Who has a better shot of being attacked, hurt, anything, if you went to my neighborhood and walked around at midnight, or if I went to your neighborhood and walked around at midnight?
Right.
I'm going to say probably me.
Right.
You know, now granted, if somebody's from the outside nobody recognized, they're probably going to ask you, what are you doing?
Right.
But that's going to be the end of it.
What you up to?
Somebody's not going to come out there and put a gun in your face.
Right.
I would get a gun put in my face probably for sure. You know,
very possible.
So that's like, for me, it's like we say there's a problem, but we don't want to admit it. It's both ways.
Right.
You know, and guns are at the center of that right now, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. So, last question, because I think this is going to rile you up. High-capacity magazines, anything over 10 rounds, in a handgun, to me, is unnecessary. As like I said, as a gun supporter, if you cannot hit what you are trying to hit in 10 rounds or less, I don't know that I want you having a gun. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to come up with some common sense gun legislation that most gun owners, and I would be okay with that. My SR9C has a 10 round magazine because it's the compact version.
Right.
It comes with an extended magazine of 17 rounds. I have 4 magazines of 10 rounds apiece. I don't have a 17 because I can't think of a situation where I would need 17 shots to hit something.
I understand that argument.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's times I would be like, okay, I would agree with you because me personally, like, I don't think I would need 10 shots to
I don't think I would need 10
take
shots.
one person to take one person down.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I also look at it as, like, possible worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be limited to how much ammunition I can have because on the other end, they're not.
So, like, 30 round drums, cool with you?
For recreational use, sure.
I mean,
but
the gun doesn't know if it's firing recreationally. You know what I mean? Like, if you're really trying to go out and do some damage, I would think, if I was putting myself in the mind of a madman, I'm trying to get the biggest capacity possible because I want as little interruption in my firing as possible.
Yes and no, because then what you have a lot of times with people who are in these mass shootings, they're using multiple guns. And I mean, you can, with just a little bit of practice, you can reload a handgun in about a half a second.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, that's why I think the high-capacity magazines isn't, like, a hot-button topic for me.
Okay.
Because I think they're so, like, they are easily reloadable. I mean, they lock open when they're empty. You hit a button, push it in, hit another button, it closes.
Right.
And with a little bit of training, or literally if you had another magazine in your hand, boom, 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 click, and you're back action.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, I don't think that would really solve anything. The 30-round magazines,
do you think it
like
would shut liberals up?
to a point, but then they're going to find, because
they're going to want you to go down to 5-round magazines.
Well, no, because I think it's like, if, say we do this, okay, and there's another shooting happens.
Right.
Then what?
Right.
I think is kind of a lot of people's, like, argument. And like I said earlier, I think when you start regulating individual things of what you can have,
right.
What's the definition of a high-capacity magazine?
Right.
It becomes a slippery slope.
No, I agree.
So I think that's why a lot of gun owners don't want to give there, because they're afraid if that does change, okay, then what if they do go down to 5?
Right.
What if I get attacked by a group of 4 people?
Right.
I'm not a freaking sniper, okay?
Right.
I'm not going for headshots here.
Right.
So, you know, and one shot doesn't always put somebody down.
No, that's true.
So, for me, I mean, I just, like, the 30-round magazines and stuff like that, you know, that wouldn't really bother me. I don't own any. I mean, they're fun if you're taking them to the range just to just blow through ammo, but...
I would almost be okay.
But here's what I want to know. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to find some statistics on this individual type of stuff, is like how many shooting deaths were done with handguns with extended magazines.
Yeah.
Okay, now we see it, you know, on these crime TV shows with the drug dealers and gangbangers, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They're already doing illegal shit. Right.
They're not,
you're not going to stop them from doing that.
And I completely agree with that, you know, over-regulation is not going to stop people who don't care about the law in the first place.
I think that's the biggest pushback from gun owners is strictly,
I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you punishing me?
So, like, they made a big mandate here recently to try to make suppressors illegal. Mm-hmm. Why?
Yeah.
You know, it's not headline news. I don't know of any, you know, mass shooting or anything that was done with a suppressor.
Right. Anybody
that's been around a suppressor or heard a gun fire with a suppressor, it doesn't make them silent.
Yeah.
It's not like the movies where you hear just a little that doesn't happen. You can hear the bullet over it. It does suppress the sound. That's why they're called suppressors, not silencers. Silencers is an inaccurate term.
Right.
People know them from the movies and shit like that.
Right. James Bond and shit.
You know, I don't know of anybody that's using suppressors to go out and maim large groups of people.
Right.
I know hunters that use them.
Mm-hmm.
Why? It doesn't interfere as much with the wildlife around you.
Right.
You know, stuff like, and I'm like, oh, I squirrel hunt.
Right.
When you pop a round off, they disappear for a few minutes and they come back 15, 20 minutes later. Mm-hmm. If I had a suppressor, you know, you'd probably be able to do it more humanely and you're not going to disrupt, you know, animals. So it's like, what are we really solving?
Right. What are we really trying to do?
So that's where like them making bump stocks illegal, trying to make suppressors illegal. Because suppressors, you can't just go buy one.
Right.
Again, you have to go through a second background check deeper than just buying the gun to begin with.
Right.
It's like a 6-month period. Then you go pick it up.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a pretty regulated thing as is.
Right. Last thing, man. You think it's going to stop? What do you think it's going to take? Like, do you think that mass shootings at this point in our nation will ever stop?
I think it can. I think we're trying to solve it from the wrong end.
Yeah.
So, any problem. When you have a problem, if you really want to stop it, you don't go step by step from the end and just try to, okay, mass shootings are going to happen. Let's make it harder.
Right.
No. Go to the source.
Right.
Why are these happening to begin with?
Right.
What's the triggers? What's causing them? So, and I understand, like, let's not make it easier by all means. That's where I'm saying, like, you know, gun stuff does need to change. The background checks need to be more extensive. There's plenty of stuff that can happen with what we already have. We need to revamp it like any other federal program.
Right.
Needs redone. That was done in the 50s.
Right.
Needs to be redone. But, you know, I look at it like you can make the same argument with, like, the opioid epidemic. Okay, you have to take the desire away to cause the harm. If
Right.
someone's a drug addict and they're hooked on painkillers,
Right.
so we say, oh, there's a big painkiller problem. Well, we're going to quit prescribing them.
Right.
That person still wants that. They still,
Right.
in their eyes, need it.
Mm-hmm.
So we take the painkillers away. What do? They transition to heroin.
Right.
We didn't solve anything. We just made the heroin problem worse.
Right.
You made the meth problem worse.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to go try to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just taking the tool away, we need to figure out why people are doing what they're doing,
Right.
the warning signs from it, and try to stop it from even entering people's thoughts to begin with.
Adam Carolla said, and I kind of used this analogy on my Idiots Having Kids podcast, where he said when an exterminator comes into your home, there's a problem with bugs. He doesn't run around the house and try and just stomp out every bug that he can find. He goes to the source.
Exactly.
And I think that the source of a lot of these things are fatherless children. I think a lot of the source of these are abused children. I think a lot of the source of these are bullied children. I think a lot of the source of this is a lot of those mental health issues that aren't being addressed, and they get exponentially worse and bottled up and bottled up and bottled up until you have Las Vegas, until you have an Aurora, until you have a Sandy Hook, until you have an El Paso or an Ohio. And you know, it's I'm hoping it was. I'm never one of these like sensationalist people like, oh my God, it was so scary to bring my son to his first day of school today. I wouldn't be lying if I said that it ran through my mind. You know what I mean? Like, God, I hope nobody fucking, you know what I mean?
And I think it's part of the problem, you know, obviously we don't recognize it early enough.
Right.
When people do recognize, they don't speak up.
Right.
You know, I was reading up on some of the, you know, total murders and all this stuff earlier, and I was looking into it, and they said like 63% of mass shootings. They basically estimated about 173. Now, mass shooting can be determined by like 4 people up to God knows how much.
Right.
Since like they had like 173 from 2009 to 2017.
Mm-hmm.
They said like 63% already had the red flags. It was recognized that they had the propensity to do mass harm.
This dude in Ohio, we were saying, you know, he had the murder list, he had the rape list and things like that. I think this guy was 24. He wrote those when he was 17. What did you want law enforcement? What did you want counselor? What did you want them to do about it? Keep an eye on him? Keep an eye on him through 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and then finally 8 years later, he's going to do, you're going to walk up to him every day for 8 years. Hey, you going to kill anybody today? You know what I mean? Like,
no, that's where at a young age, like if a kid is already, you know,
showing signs of aggression
or,
and
you know,
impulse control and things like that.
We need to notice that.
Yeah.
Get these kids help so that we understand why they feel the way they feel.
Right.
Get them in better situations. You know, all that starts at home, unfortunately. Like, you can't control what people do with their kids. But,
right.
You know, and that was a thing, too, I was reading up. Like, they said the majority of mass shootings, they come from
fatherless homes.
Well, no, like, the link was like child abuse, domestic issues.
I agree. Yeah, I would completely buy that.
A third of mass shooters already were ineligible of purchasing firearms, whether they took them from someone else or something of that nature. So it's like, you can't stop that part.
Right.
So the only way to stop that is to combat the psychological thought process of why do you want to harm people?
Right.
And I think, and that's what, then I've said that with drugs, I've said that with guns, everything.
Investing, and I think that's what the big takeaway from this is investing in the mental health of the community, the family, and the individual. All 3 of them.
Yep.
There is no sense of community anymore. I know this neighbor, and you know me, dude. I'm a very social dude. I know this neighbor, and I know this neighbor. That's it.
Yeah.
I remember my parents knowing the guy we lived on literally one end of the block, and my dad knew the guy on the other end of the block and every person in between.
And you didn't have the internet.
We don't have it. That's true. You had to talk to people back then. You had to talk to people
to get to know them. So that's where,
right.
I think it would be good, and I'm guilty of it. I've got a kid.
Right.
of unplugging your children.
No, and I've
Get them involved in as many programs, sports.
I agree.
Anything.
I agree.
And don't just put them in the same programs that they go to school.
Right.
You know,
Right.
do them in summer leagues in a different city.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
No, I think that's a great idea.
Get them around other kids.
Other
So, like,
kids.
that's where I'm glad for me. You know, like, I'm from that small town where we had a handful of black people go through there when I was the whole 12 years.
Right.
Okay. You know, my kid, we spent a couple years in Jeffersonville.
Mm-hmm.
He went to school down here, and he went to school with everybody of every color.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't see it.
Right.
And I'm telling you, he didn't for years.
Right.
And I remember one time he made a comment of, like, why is that person's, like, skin color different
Mm-hmm.
when he was little?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking, like, 2 or 3. And me and his mom were like, well, buddy, I mean, not everybody's the same.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, he is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Or she's the same as you.
Mm-hmm.
We're all people. We just look different.
Right.
But, I mean, they have a mom. They have a dad.
Mm-hmm.
They go to school.
Right.
The same way. You know, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like
Right.
you do. And he was like, oh, okay.
Okay. Right.
And that was the end
And
of
they
it.
don't need any further
So it's like, I
explanation.
think we need to kind of reel kids in a little bit, you know, get them off online stuff, unplug them a little bit,
Right.
let them be a kid.
I agree.
We want the kids to grow up and we try to expose them. You need to know how it really is. They do.
Let them be a kid.
They do, but not when they're like 5.
Right.
Like,
Right.
let's let them learn it on their own.
Right.
You know, a little bit. You have
No,
to
I
kind of
agree.
trust that your parenting's doing a good job
Mhm.
and let the kids do it. You can't be teaching them, you know, oh, there's hate in the world, there's this, there's
Right.
that. Like, of
There'll
course
be
there
enough.
is.
There'll be enough time for all that. You
Right.
know what
And
I
it's
mean?
like, let them experience something, and if they have a problem with it, then help them.
Right.
But you can't, like, precondition your kid to know how to handle every situation, because you're shielding them from everything. So when something does happen, they don't know how to handle it. I think that's why we're having so much more violence nowadays. So that's for me, gun violence is an asinine term.
Yeah. Violence is violence.
Violence is violence. I don't care if you use a gun. I don't care if you use your fist. I don't care if you stab somebody. Why
We
do
need to
you
get
want to
to the
cause
root.
harm? Why do you want to harm somebody?
Right. And we need
That's
to
my
get to
thing.
the root of the violence issue. Jonathan, I really appreciate you coming down, man.
I appreciate you having me, man. I've been looking forward to this for months. I'm glad we finally were able to
Hash it
finally
out.
have
We'll
a
definitely
combo.
we'll have to do another one, because there was some other things like video game violence and things like that we didn't get to. But my kid is ready to be picked up, so I appreciate everybody for listening. Bobby Agua podcast, Chopping Fables. We're on Facebook, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify. It ain't hard to find me, man. Holler at your boy.
You got a birthday, and then you gotta work that same day. Let's go. I ain't from the 6, but I can show them the views. I'm staying viral for a few in the eyes of the new. My perception was embedded within the stars. Formation smelling gory, death the glory steps from a far location. Look inside Pandora's box for a choice of different weapons. Never know if it's my kindness or a sharp Smith and Wesson. Depending on your discovery, we'll take it there. You verse another legend in the making, like create a player. I'm a window through the pain, seen and heard about. Folklore, you in a story created by word of mouth. Then I'm chopping fables, chopping fables, chopping fables, chopping fables. The hell wrong with him? Boy lost his mind.